Permaculture really starts with an ethic. Earth care. It's care of the whole systems of Earth and the species. So we actually devise model systems. Much of the design is drawn from nature. The end result that we aim for is to produce a system that's ecologically sound and economically profitable. It can get as sophisticated or as simple as you like. A city like New York has only one product, it's garbage and feces. And if we sit here, we can watch barge after barge load of fertiliser proceeding to be dumped at sea. And if it was returned to source and used on the land to produce the food for New York, then it would be no pollution. But when we dump it at sea, it wipes out 700 square miles of ocean per year. So you can see the only product of New York is shit, and it actually is used to kill parts of the sea. We have built nothing so unsustainable as cities. We can only remedy this if we produce the food consumed by the cities in the cities. And we will start by looking at some of the wastelands and what can be done with them. There's hundreds, probably thousands of acres of wasteland in the cities like New York, and depends on the city authorities as to whether these are turned into food for the people of the city or whether those options are closed off. And common sense would dictate that all space now in the city be kept open and given over to people for their own gardens. Hey, these guys.
I left my hat in there.
City authorities don't willingly give up space, so coalitions like the Green Guerrillas form to force them to give space for gardens. So there's a considerable voting bloc in support of this garden at City Hall. The garden was founded by only 5 Green Guerrillas, and now 150 families use the garden, and it's visited by many other people in the district.
This is some of the peppers that are still coming up. We have eggplant over here, a white eggplant. We don't use any pesticides here. We'll put in, we have praying mantis and ladybugs. Yeah. We do use some BT and stuff like that rather than, you know, using chemicals.
Most people would know these as allotments, and they are the most productive use of landscape for food in the world, and they're what kept European countries alive during wars. Even in a city like New York, there are hundreds and probably thousands of city farms. There was about 1,100 here a year or two back. And so many people are involved in part-time farming or production. And also there's a lot of community gardens to which a lot of people have access and which give at least a breathing space in the city. City farms are all built on what everybody else throws away. They all have small recycling centres, all their soil is compost, and they have innovative uses for the other things that people throw away. This is Eric sculpture in New York. It's from Objects Trouvé. And it's very like the Watts Towers down in Los Angeles. It's a great thing to have in any community garden. It's full of interest. There's 1 million people live in this situation. I met Ray Walden, who was in one of the groups that took over these gardens when it was wasteland and brought in soil to get it going. Ray's an invalid pensioner, but he gets food all year from this garden.
I'd say I take a shopping bag of tomatoes and peppers and that sort of thing out at least once a week. We've been we're very fortunate in that. And of course the thing is that you have something, it's always different, you know, according to the time of the growing season. But we get things as early as in April, and you know, greens and that sort of thing. We're getting crops right through Well, we've been here since '83. We've been getting mostly through December. Right about then, we'll get a good killing frost. It'll take it all. And then you collect what's on the vine, and that's the end of that season. But you start early again. You start in February, and, you know, start eating again in April.
These little farm blocks are very much more than gardens. They are social and neighbourhood centres. Young mothers come and they have picnics with their children. People come for small parties. And the elderly come here to rest and get away from the city for a while. There are people with wheelchairs and people with a bad arthritis who can't bend down to garden, or people with bad backs. And it's better to raise the bed up like this, about top of the thigh. And here's all their fruit and everything at waist level or at wheelchair level. You can build it up like this and fill it with earth. In this case, I had to do that because there isn't any dirt on the ground. And or you can build this on top of ordinary tables using mulch, just a straw mulch, and people can garden in that. So it doesn't matter which way you go about it, but these raised beds are real important to old people. The only rare resource in the cities is space, and when we get it, we have to make the most use of it. Well, in urban areas, there are two ways you can stack in more fruit. One is to use dwarf or semi-dwarf fruit trees, and a few of those here, plums and apricots. And the other one is to make a fence out of your fruit trees as an espalier. And underneath the grapes here, there's espalier apples, which just go along like rails. And as they get older, you graft one into the other, and you actually make a fence out of apples and pears. So that takes up hardly any room at all for production. So there's several ways you can capitalise on space. Well, in the city farms, and in fact in all urban areas, vertical space is really important. And with vines you can convert the whole wall into grape production or kiwi production. But the other thing about the vines is that they're active insulators. The hotter it gets, the more they sweat, the cooler the shadow gets inside the vine. And the colder it gets, the more they close down their air systems. So they prevent the entry of 70% of excess summer heat, and they prevent the escape of 40% of your winter warmth. So they're really doing a fine job as insulators on these walls. What's more, with a brick wall in good condition, they'll preserve it about 200 years longer than it would be without vines. Beautiful grapes too. So you can see that, you know, it's not just gardening, it's design, and design for lowering energy inputs. Most city farm can have livestock, but the one most commonly kept is the bee. And if you put the hive above people's heads, then we clear the flood path, and hopefully we won't get stung. But all city farms can have bees, and many have other small domestic animals. So this is a rare honey label, pure Manhattan honey. Maybe one day we'll see 6th Street tacos, you know, 4th Street corn. Who knows? Depends on the city. It's springtime in Melbourne, and we're in a city farm called Ceres. For a very large number of children, this is the only chance they ever get to handle animals and to find out where milk comes from, all sorts of simple things. That's nice. You're going to take good care. What are you going to feed it on? Vitamins? Warm milk? What else? Cake. City farms are primarily community educational centres, and the skills taught range from simple things like planting a tree to complex things like designing an energy-efficient home. This house is about as typical in its structural form as any house around the district, and it was moved in here to show how many ways you can make inexpensive additions to the house to heat and cool it and to produce the hot water, and that's 80% of energy. It does a little better than that, and as time goes on, it gets a little more efficient. And it's just a few solar additions here and there. In the Western world cities, we're totally accustomed to limitless water and information, and space is not so restricted, but in the third world, space is very restricted and water is not piped necessarily to your house. So we have to be very careful and innovative about the way we go about gardening. Here we are on Professor Aurora's roof in the city of Hyderabad with his wife Ira, who's made a little garden up here which provides quite a lot of food, fresh food for them both. We'll go and meet Ira. Hello, Ira. Your garden's looking very good this year. We were interested in your watering system, which is, I think, the most efficient system, because it wastes the least water of all, I think, in dry areas. Here in the Aurora's rooftop garden, Ira sunk pots, and she fills them every few days. They seep out slowly through the unglazed clay and keep all the plants alive in the garden. I think this is the best watering system, really, as far as dryland goes. And as far as saving water, the Malabar spinach. What do you call the Malabar spinach?
Pui.
Pui.
Pui in Bengali.
Yeah, well, that's a shorter name, huh?
Yes, and it doesn't need any care at all.
No, it's marvelous.
It just, when it wants to grow, it will grow all over.
And here, I see we've got a
Some
a custard apple, huh?
Yeah.
And you've had some from the tree.
We've eaten about four or five. This is the first season that it's growing.
Oh, that's great. But I think extends the roof is the tall trees around the edges, you know?
Yes.
We go and have a look at some of the passion fruit and
Yes.
good. Yeah, well, this passion fruit has made it right up
Yes.
to the top.
Did you do that?
No.
It came on its own.
Yeah, how could I do that?
You never know.
No, you don't know where there are one. But there's some ripe ones just down near the window.
Yes.
Yeah. If we leave the dense situation of Hyderabad, where the rooftops are the logical place to garden, and go to the suburbs of Africa, we'll see that a lot of space is available between houses, both for trees and gardens. In Harare, we have very crowded working people's houses. One of the real problems we get around housing, where there's malaria problem, is that with the bath water or the washing water is so rich in potash and nutrients that this is an ideal mosquito breeding place. And a couple of years ago, mosquitoes were very bad here.
We had problems because they were flying all over, and what we decided to do is to build this thing to catch the water from the outside tap and the bathroom tap, and will lead us to this pit, which we dug. So what happens, all the water from the tap and the grey water from the bathroom will run into here. So instead of just spreading and just being exposed, it's being used by the plants to grow. Also, there is well drained, so it percolates into the ground. You can see bananas and sugar canes, and we've grown a lot of different things.
Like any good third world city, there's a market just down the road. Every item in these markets is either gathered from the bush or produced in the small gardens around the market or on small farms very close to Harare. That's good.
Thank you. Yeah, very much. Thank you very much. What about you, madam?
There's a